Hello there and welcome back to another edition of the Hot Lab Classic Remastered. This time we're taking a look at the 1997 Venturi Atlantique 400 GT. Last time out we had an Italian supercar that did not look like an Italian supercar. This time out we have not an Italian supercar that looks like an Italian supercar. This is, the Venturi Atlantique 400 GT, a car that I would imagine is in Gran Turismo 2 purely because it looks a lot of it, like a Ferrari F40. That's not to say the Atlantique 400 GT is not cool in its own right, because it is. This is a fascinating car. This comes from a time when supercar makers had one make spec series. Jaguar was doing with the XJR15. There were several of these, and one of them was the Atlantique 400 GT trophy, where if you was a rich gentleman driver and you wanted to go racing, you could buy yourself an Atlantique, get it converted into a cup car, and then go racing in it. And it was actually quite popular. You see a lot of the 400 GTs were actually converted, well, I say a lot, about 10 of them were converted from race cars into road cars. Which is sort of what this is based on. I think there was also a separate road car which didn't sell very well. I think the trophy sold more. There was actually one of these for sale not that long ago, which was fascinating. But essentially what this is it looks like it does, which is fantastic. It's got a turbocharged PRV V6 in the back, and it's awesome, and it's French, and it's great. This car benefits significantly from the GT2 Plus mod. So in the base game, this only makes about 420 horsepower, and that's because Polyphony kind of cocked up. You see, the 400 GT, I know it doesn't have bi-turbo in the name like the 300 Atlantique does. That doesn't mean this didn't have a turbocharger, which it did, but Polyphony for some reason forgot about it. And so it means this car misses on intercooler upgrades, and you basically add a turbo to it from the turbo upgrade. GT2 Plus has fixed that, so it has a turbo at stock, which doesn't improve the power, but that does mean you can do stage 2 and stage 3 turbos, and they adjust the boost accordingly, and you can have intercooler upgrades. And what that means is this car makes about 200 more horsepower than it would have done in the base game, and means this now makes about the same amount of power that the 300 bi-turbo does. Whereas in the base game, you're far better off going with the 300 bi-turbo. Another thing to mention, which GT2 Plus does not fix, which is slightly irritating, this car is asymmetrical. As you can see, there's like a graphical glitch on the back end if it goes on the non-Lager side, this side, and and this side just says Lagers randomly and nothing else, so I don't know what's going on there. I guess the French got bored when they were applying stickers to it, I don't know. It does look cool though. I like the very simplistic race mod. Mid-engined rear-wheel drive, 462 horsepower, which I think is actually about the same as that Vector made last time out. 1,026 kilos. So we are going to see. I mentioned last time that Vector would have probably been worse off by weighing 200, 300 kilo less. So I guess we're going to see what that looks like with the Venturi Atlantique. This car is going to have 6 laps of the Motorsports Land track in order to the best time it possibly can. Our current leader is the Mitsubishi GTO LM Edition 99. That car's at a time of 27.017. The Venturi Atlantique 400 GT is unlikely to beat that. As I mentioned, we have had the 300 bi-turbo go around. That car set a time of I think it was just into the under 30 club, 29.907. So the 400 GT is looking to beat that. Game is apparently having some sads, which is weird because this computer is godly. Anyways, that's what we're aiming for. So we will try and get our act together and put a lap together. The first thing that is sort of striking me with this car is the brakes are terrible. You know how I mentioned this car in the base game had about 420 horsepower, and now it has about 600 odd? I think the one thing that probably wasn't accounted for when they changed the power, and I suppose it doesn't really make sense to change it, the brakes were a part of that sort of initial balancing for this car. It doesn't stop particularly well. 29.429. Doesn't that... No, that means it is 2,000th of a millisecond slower than the Vector M12, so can we beat that? On paper, this should be quicker than that Vector, but yeah, the brakes are atrocious. Like, usually you just sort of dab them through there and drive the rest of the corner around, but not in this. In this, you have to be a little bit more liberal with your use of the brake pedal. It's not great. It does have to be said. Other than that, it drives okay. It is, as I would expect, it's not as nice to drive as somewhat like the Vector M12, for example. You know, you get more wheel spin. It does feel more unsettled because it weighs less. And again, you got that braking issue to deal with. But other than that, it drives all right. I don't think we're going to go any quicker on this final lap because I sort of cocked up for that first. Yeah, it's one of these where if you try and push it, it doesn't really want to play ball. You've got to sort of be on its own level with it, which is not great, but yeah, that is probably about where that should go. I think there's a little bit of time in there if you can master the brakes, but as I mentioned, the brakes are atrocious in this, and it's quite hard to sort of show that when I'm driving around. You're like, oh well, just brake earlier. There's a lot of muscle memory involved with driving around here, and also I don't usually expect to brake that much sooner, so yeah, that does kind of make this fall apart a bit, but yeah, interesting where it ends up, I guess. It was the quickest lap by far. I think there's a bit more time to find in there if you can push it, but pushing it is part of the problem. Anyway, it's a 29.429. We'll place this into 77th place. It goes just behind the Vector M12 we had last time by 2,000th of a second. I don't think we've had a car that's gone back-to-back with another one end up that close to it before. That is interesting. And so it sort of beats the same stuff that the Vector did. Cars equivalent to this. It's 0.1 up on the Lister Storm, 0.2 up on the Roof BTR2, 0.3 TVR Cerberus Speed 6, and a couple of the other roofs. As I mentioned, about 0.5 up on the 300 Bi-Turbo. So, yeah, it's a good car. It's just I think if you got this on a track between this and an M12, it probably wouldn't be too bad. To be honest with you, on a conventional track, I'm sure you wouldn't notice the brakes as much as I notice around here, just because this is a very stop-start course. But yeah, just be aware the brakes in this are not particularly great. Anyways, that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for watching. Join me next time when I'll be driving something completely different. Until then, farewell.